Hello. We're once again back with another Hydro character, because this is clearly the best element in the game. Now, Mona received some buffs in the latest patch. Was it called Luna 3? AK 6.2? I don't know why they're calling it Luna, that's weird. But she, as well as many other characters from Mondstadt, received some very nice buffs. They are now part of a sort of faction resonance, I guess you could say, similar to how you get Ascendant Gleam with the Nodcry characters. You can now get a Hexarray faction resonance if you have two characters that are part of the Hexarray faction. And that would be the characters that received buffs in the current patch. Now, it is important to say what characters those are because you have to have two of them to get all of the buffs for the characters. So the characters that are part of this faction would be Durin, the new character. His Hexarray buff isn't really that insane. It's more so just there so that Durin can enable the Hexarray resonance by being in a team with one of the other characters. Outside of Durin, the other characters would be Albedo, Klee, Venti, Mona, Sucrose, Fischl, and Razor. I believe that's all of them, unless I'm schizophrenic. And these are, they vary in how good the buffs are. Some of them are crazy, some of them are just sort of there, like Sucrose, for example. Sucrose's Hexarray buffs mostly just boil down to she's a Hexarray character. You get like a little bit of extra damage percent that doesn't really matter, but it's still a buff to Sucrose because it means she can enable the Hexarray resonance. So very nice to have nonetheless. But other characters like Albedo and Mona received very substantial buffs to basically their entire kits. So that's why we're talking about Mona right now, because she received very substantial buffs. Now let's go over what those were. Now, first off, not all of the buffs have to be acquired through having two Hexarray characters, right? Like, you don't have to have the resonance to get every single buff. A lot of the buffs that have been given to these characters are separated mostly into like buffs that are related to the Hexarray resonance and buffs related to constellations. So like Mona, her first buff with this is part of the Hexarray resonance, but then the other buffs are to her C1, C2, C3, and C4 and C6. These work without a second Hexarray character. That being said, you are still likely going to want two Hexarray characters because the Hexarray resonance for her is very, very substantial. Now, before the buff, Mona suffered from very low uptime. Her burst gives up to 60% damage bonus, and this is very nice. It's a pretty large number. For reference, a C1 for Rina gives 75% at max fanfare, and it's really hard to get max fanfare. So Mona being able to give 60 right away, no healer needed and no build-up needed, is pretty good. Except it's not, because she has 5-second duration on her Omen, which tends to make it be a bit of a yikes. But that has been mostly fixed. So the first buff, the Hexarray resonance buff to Mona, firstly makes it so that when she hits an enemy with a normal or charge attack, she gains 1 stack of Astral Glow of Mercury. We'll just call it Astral Glow. I just butchered the word Mercury. So Astral Glow stacks up to 3 times and has a total duration of 8 seconds. And when a teammate triggers a vaporized reaction, it will consume all of those stacks and increase this reaction by 5% per stack. So capped out at 15%. This is pretty nice. It's additive, I believe, with the increased damage bonus to reactions you receive from Elemental Mastery. So on a character that's already stacked with EM, I think this is like, what, around 100 EM equivalents or so. It's pretty good, but it's mostly meant to be used, I think, in a team with Durin. So a lot of the time you're not going to make use of this, but that is the less valuable part of this buff. The other half of this is when Mona performs a normal or charge attack on an enemy affected by her Omen, it extends its duration by 2 seconds. This can trigger once every half a second and caps out at 8 seconds or 4 normal attacks. And what do you know? Her normal attack string is 4 normal attacks, and each attack has at least half a second in between it. So you cast her burst, you do a full normal attack string, and all of a sudden the Omen duration went from 5 seconds to 13 seconds. Massive, humongous, ginormous buff for Mona. Now she actually has reasonable uptime. Granted, you do have to stay on field long enough to do a full normal attack string to get the extra 8 seconds, but that's not that bad, and I think it's like maybe 2 seconds at most, so it's not that big of a deal. Though it can matter in some teams, so it's worth noting. Just this alone already skyrockets Mona's value. She's already significantly better now because she can have basically 100% uptime on her buff in short rotating teams, like with Milani, for example. So that's very, very nice to have. On top of that, though, she did receive buffs to her constellations, right? The C1, C2, C4, and C6. So the C1, previously, what it already did was enemies affected by the Omen will get a increase to damage taken from hydro-related elemental reactions, which will be electrocharged, lunar charged, vaporize, hydro swirl, and frozen, but it being the frozen duration instead of extra damage. 15% varies in how valuable it is. Like, for example, 15% lunar charge damage is not nearly as big of an increase as 15% vaporize damage, and I believe this is also additive to the damage bonus you see from elemental mastery to reaction. And I don't know if they fixed it, but before her buff, the frozen duration extension of 15% was bugged for over 5 years. I'm hoping they fixed it, but I have not tested it, so I do not know. On top of that, though, the new buff to her C1 makes it so that additionally, when a party member is off field, it increases these buffs to 1.6 times their original value. So it brings it from what I think 15% to 23.5%. Unless I'm wrong, right? Yeah, it should be 23.5%. So basically 24% increase in like vaporized, lunar charged, or electrocharge, for example. This is nice to have. It's not like insane or anything. Again, another example where it's mostly targeted at Durin, I believe, where you have Mona on field and Durin off field, and he's the one dealing most of the damage, with Mona being the driver. But it's still a nice thing that can affect other teams. Now her C2 before the buff was when she performs a normal attack, there's a 20% chance it will automatically be followed up by a charge attack. And this has a 5-second internal cooldown. This was terrible, horrendous, dogshit, dookie doo-doo. But it is much better now. On top of that effect, additionally, after she uses her elemental burst, the next normal attack is guaranteed to trigger a charge attack, sharing the same 5-second cooldown. So that's something I really want to emphasize because it's something I tested. I was a little sad that it did. Anyways, on top of that, when Mona performs the charge attack, regardless of how she performs the charge attack, so it doesn't have to be by the one she gets for free after her burst, the entire team receives 80 elemental mastery for 12 seconds. That is very nice. Another 80 EM, more free buffing for the team. Very juicy. The C4 before was enemies affected by the Omen will have plus 15% crit rate added to the crit rate of the character attacking them. Basically, you whack them, you get 15 crit rate when whacking them. This on its own was okay, but its main issue was that the Omen did not last long. So the Omen going up to 13-second duration, you can make use of this 15 crit rate much better now, making it a much stronger constellation than it was before. On top of that, the buff made it so you also get an extra 15 crit damage when attacking an enemy affected by an Omen if you are a Hexarray party member. So only the characters on the team that are of the Hexarray party and make use of this extra 15 crit damage. Doesn't really matter that much. I mean, it's only 15 crit damage. It's not that big of a deal. But that is there for if you're using a Hexarray character as the DPS in the team. And then finally, her C6. This was really bad before, just downright horrendous. And now it actually matters a pretty decent amount if you're trying to make a DPS Mona. But it is a C6, of course, so you're going to have to get her to C6. Now, before the buffs, what it really did, or originally did, was when she is in her illusory torrent, her alternate sprint, sprinting around under the water, every second she's in that state, she gets a 60% bonus damage to her next charge attack per second, stacking up to a max of 180% after 3 seconds. This buff lasts no more than 8 seconds. And I believe it is consumed. Yeah, it's consumed because it's on the next charge attack. It's not for all of the next charge attack. This was horrible because you had to stay in the sprint for 3 seconds just for some extra charge attack damage. And sprinting around is obviously a very large loss in DPS. This is also something that is less valuable than it looks at first glance because the damage bonus is considered damage percent in the same way as a goblet would be, right? Like hydro damage bonus, this would fall under the same category as that, meaning it is additive, so it's not a 180% increase in damage, it's 180% damage bonus. So it's already a diluted value in her kit, additive to also her Elemental Burst Omen for another 60% damage. Still nice, but not really usable. Now though, on top of that, when an enemy is affected by her Omen, you will also build up the bonus damage every second for 60% every second. So just having your burst on an enemy will also build up this effect, which is massive. And on top of that, on enemies affected by her Omen, the motion value of her charge attack is just doubled. Straight up double the damage. So double the motion value and up to 180% damage bonus. This is very, very massive. Very, very massive. So she can get a substantial increase in damage to her charge attacks. So if you're trying to make Mona into a main DPS, this will make it a lot easier. Now, it does still have its issues because we don't have a lot of great characters for a DPS Mona team right now, so it's kind of wonky, but I'll get to that later. Now, all of this together, a C0 Mona received only the buffs to her duration if you have another Hexray character, right? 5 to 13 seconds, and the little bit of extra vape reaction damage to your teammates. But if you have a C4, at least Mona, as far as buffs are considered, now you get another another 8.5% extra Hydra-related reaction damage to off-field teammates. You get another 80 Elemental Mastery to the team. You get another 15 crit damage to Hexarray teammates. And of course, the extra crit rates from C4, which is really massive, lasts the full duration of 13 instead of 5 seconds. This is a lot of buffs on top of her being a Catalyst user, which means she can use Thrilling Tales of the Dragon Slayers, 48% attack. And you can also use 4-piece Noblesse for another 20% attack. She now gives more buffs than any other character in the game. Now, I'm not gonna compare her to like a C2 5-star or a C6, I guess, isn't super comparable. Like a C2 Seat Lolly is gonna give probably a bigger damage buff than a Mona would at C4, but Mona is a standard banner unit, meaning getting her to C4 or getting her in general is going to be a hell of a lot easier than getting a limited banner character. And now she is a really, really solid unit as far as buffing goes. Now, she is still a Hydro character, and this has both its ups and downs because it means she can work in for Hydro Resonance, but as far as Hydro application goes, she doesn't have enough to really enable consistent Hydro reactions. But she has enough that if you use your skill, you can screw over some other reactions. But it doesn't always matter because you can just skip out on her skill, assuming you build enough energy recharge, which is what you'll usually end up doing. Now, she has a couple teammates she works really well with, and then there's already teammates that she didn't work well with and she still doesn't work well with, but she has a lot more options now than she did before. Now, the first character I would like to show her with is Mualani, because Mualani, I feel like, I know, not because I know, but because other people with bigger brains than me know and proved that Mualani received the biggest buff as far as Mona's buffs go, because Mualani had some issues with her team. Now, if you put another Hydro character in Mualani's team before Mona's buff, because Mona did not buff the team long enough for it to matter, so you wouldn't use Mona in a Mualani team. So if you had another Hydro character in the team, to get Hydro Resonance, well, now you got too much Hydro application and it's a lot harder to vape all of your hits on Mualani. But if you don't have another Hydro character, you don't have Hydro Resonance, and now the only Hydro application you can get to try to swirl with is with Mualani herself, which means you have to try to do some weird normal attacks and a charge attack to try to override your pyro application at the end of your rotation to then try to swirl. But then if you do the rotation wrong and you mess it up, then you can't even get the Hydro back easily, and it was a whole ordeal. A very, very big sad. But now we have Mona. You can just use her instead. She gives enough Hydro application to easily swirl with Sucrose, but she doesn't give so much or any off-field that she's screwing up the vape reactions that Mualani's trying to do. She also doesn't buff for like a super long time because it's 13 seconds and she does have on-field time. But that works fine for Mualani because Mualani has short field time. She has very fast rotations. So Mualani can make full use of all of Mona's buffs now. And she does a lot more damage with the Mona team now. I believe other people were saying, I think like Zajev was saying that Mualani's best team now should be close to, if not on the same level as the Moika team, which is wild because Moika is leagues above in DPS than other characters. Now, of course, you have to take into account you're playing Mualani. And for anyone that has Mualani, you know that she is really clunky, really painful to play at times. She just misses half of her attacks all of the time. Her targeting is ass. But if you're willing to suffer to play Mualani, she is now in her best team, really freaking strong in like the second best DPS in the game, right behind Moika. So that's quite snazzy. Now, I believe her best team is Mualani, Mona, Sucrose, and Moika as a Moika off-field pyro application. But I don't have Moika, so we are using Pyro Traveler here. I need to steal these artifacts over from Shalonen because I don't have a dedicated set for my Pyro Traveler. But here, you can see all the pieces I have on her, just so you know what I've got going on. We have Festering Desire here, but we're going to switch over to Favonius just for extra particles. Here's my Sucrose, very straightforward VV with just triple EM and then a level 90 Sacrificial Fragments. And then Mona, I have her at C6. You don't make use of attack bonus here because Mualani's HP scaling. So Thrilling Tales doesn't actually do anything here. So I'm just going to switch to Favonius, or I guess Prototype Amber can work here as well. I don't really like having to switch over my artifact set to. Technically, the best option here is to run Prototype Amber and Song of Days Past. But it's going to make such a small increase in damage. It really doesn't matter. And getting a whole separate set of Song of Days Past just for your Mona, just for a Mualani team, not really worth it. So I'm just going to stick with Noblesse, even though it's doing absolutely nothing for my Mualani. But you can see she's C6, Triple Crown, and 221 energy recharge. My Mualani, she does not have signature, but she does have her C1. My artifacts are absolutely botched because I'm overkilling on crit rates. Even without the 15 crit from Mona, I'm already going to be at over 100 crit rate on my Mualani. So take this with a massive grain of salt. The point is to show the team in action more than anything else, right? So this is not optimal by any means. And I'm also really bad at the game, so also take that into account. Totally not random cut. So on the first rotation, Hydro isn't really an issue, of course, because we don't already have Pyro going. But for like future rotations, this guy's going to die in one rotation. But for enemies that don't die in one rotation, it really helps that you have the extra Hydro without it being too much on Mona. Plus, you can Mona skill, which is going to be giving you the extra particles for Mualani, letting you burst more often. So, I mean, that's pretty nice. So we go in, and first I'm going to skill and burst on Mona. Then I do the 4 normal attacks. Then I go to Traveler and I use their skill. Then I swirl with Sucrose, and then I go in and I skill on Mualani, and bam. 989,000. I mean, like I said before, take it with a grain of salt. My build is super questionable, but I do have her C1, which is going to be a massive damage increase, right? But that's pretty insane. And you can do multiple attacks on an enemy while still having all those buffs up pretty fast. I guess we could also show it on the dude in Natlin, right? This guy. We'll show it on this guy because I don't think he'll die immediately, but man, do I hate this big fatty over here. He likes to spin at you and whack you and stagger you, and he spits out the balls, and if you don't have Pyro, then he absolutely fucks your shit up. I really hate testing stuff from this guy, but he just so happens to have the most HP, making him better for, like, you know, when you want to test something on an enemy that happens to do way more damage than what your current enemy is trying to have. Look at that, 980k. Absolutely messed up the rotation just a tad bit, but It's fine. See, you can see it did a lot of damage. I really should have done the skill and the burst on Traveler there because I ran out of my skill duration, meaning I wasn't able to get that last vaporize. But you can get the idea, right? You get the proof of concept. As long as you're not trash at the game like me, you too can do damage. I say you too, even though I failed it. You get the point though. Now, that is going to be the main team that makes use of Mualani the most, is Mona. But there are other characters. And there's also other characters that can make use of other than just Mona with Sucrose. Because Sucrose is here because she works well with Mualani, and we need the extra Hexarray character. But there are also other Hexarray characters. I do not have Albedo, but he could work. He does give some nice buffs now, but instead of Albedo, what if we use Fischl? See, Fischl with Hexarray buffs makes it so now when Oz is on the field and you trigger a reaction, you get 22.5% attack for 10 seconds if you trigger Overload, and 90 elemental mastery for 10 seconds if you trigger Electro or Lunar Charged. And this doubles at C6 for 45% attack and 180 EM. And what makes this even juicier is these are not mutually exclusive. If you can trigger Electro or Lunar Charged and you trigger Overload, you can get both the buffs. That's 45% attack and 180 EM. That's massive, 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 massive. So in teams that do Overvape, you can use Fischl and you can use Mona together, which is pretty snazzy if you ask me. Now, the first example I want to show this team with would be we might as well start with Arlecchino, since I already have this right here. Now, something that some people might struggle with, like me, is not having good cryo at all. I have no Seat Lolly. My Arlecchino, she dookie, or at least she was dookie doo-doo. I also do not have her signature. Now, just so you see, this is her build. It's okay at best. Honestly, could definitely use some work. But she is C0, no signature, Jadewing Spear. You do lose damage by not melting, and she does really like to melt. I'm not going to say this is better than her melt team, but it is an alternative. So we use Mona here, and she is obviously going to be giving us very nice buffs. And we use Fischl. That way we have more off-field damage plus another increase to EM and attack. And then we have Xingqiu here so that we get some defensive capabilities, plus he's a 4-star, plus he has Hydro application. We need more Hydro because Mona's not enough to be able to always vape. We want to vape while also being able to trigger some Overload and Electrocharge to get the buffs from Fischl. So we got the double Hexarray, so we got the buffs. We got the Hydro, so we got the vapes, and we got the Electro, so we have the Overload and the Electrocharge. All sorts of buffs happening. Now, my Xingqiu, he's got a pretty solid build here. So, yeah, I have Durin's weapon, but no Durin, don't worry about it. C6, he's a 4-star. I think most people have him. Obviously, this build is better than average, I guess. I wouldn't say it's crazy, but it's a decent build. This weapon is going to give us an extra 28% attack because we have Hexray active. But, yeah, I'm going to keep it on because I can, so get clapped. Overall, though, we will be getting so many buffs to our Arlecchino. And we have double attack here because we are going to be overkilling on damage percent pretty effectively. Now, let us go and wacky thwacky this dude over here. Where was that Fontaine guy? No, Sumeru. See, I'm not as dumb as I look. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to go back to this guy because he's just the easiest to test stuff on, and I have a waypoint here. Anyways, we open with our skill on Arlecchino. Then we want to Xingqiu skill and burst because his stuff lasts longer. Then I can do this. I did do a whoopsies in that I really should have put I missed the crit on the giant hit. That would have been like 130k. That's crippling depression. You get the point though, right? The team's pretty solid. If I didn't miss my crits, that guy would have died way faster, and I forgot to put Thrilling Tales back on my Mona. Do we run it back? You know what? Just for you, I'll run it back. Let's cut to running it back. All right, here we are, boys. Running it back. Now, we do have Thrilling Tales on Mona this time. Yay. I am not going to use crit food We're just going to pray to RNGesus that I don't miss my crits this time. Will I probably still miss them? More than likely. Will we pray to RNGesus that we don't? Yes. Will he bless us? Unlikely. Anyways. Please, please, please. Come on! Yes, 132. I missed like all of my crits up until 75 crit rate. I mean, come on, let's be real. Anything under 100 might as well be 20%. Fuck this. Anyways, you get the point. It's a very nice team, very fun, very comfortable. It's a lot less painful to play than Melts because it's a lot harder to screw up your reactions. And if you don't have Seat Lolly, I mean, this is with a 4-star, a 4-star, and a 5-star from the standard banner, and all 3 of these characters are from 1.0. Now, you do kind of want Fischl at C6, but it's not necessary, and you don't need Mona past C0, but having Constellations does help, of course. Now, outside of this, another pretty good overvape team that you can run would be the same exact team, but with Yoimiya. And she can also make use of this pretty nicely. Now I have to go back and get my energy to make this work, sad face, because I'm out of energy. But it's okay, because that's just how it be. Now, if you don't finish this rotation, look, you can see I immediately got my energy back, right? I mean, your builds probably won't be exactly the same as me. I would recommend slightly higher ER, but still, as long as you have half decent ER and you finish the rotation, because that enemy died before we finished a whole rotation, then you'll have no issues. And we don't need to skill right away because we're not on Arlecchino anymore. So obviously that's not something we have to worry about anymore. So we just go back, repeat the process, get all of our juicy buffs, go to Yoimiya, and start schwacking away. Why do I always miss the most important crits? I can't even, bro. Yet again, I missed the crits. I'm not running it back. I'm sorry. I did it the first time. I'm not doing it again. 67, 218. My build on Yoimiya is decent. I have Thundering Pulse. She's C0, 4-piece Shimenawas. If that had crit, it was going to be, well, I think that was like 36k without the crit. So it would have been like, what, over 110k, something like that. It would have been a pretty nice hit. Damn, that's unfortunate. Very nice team for Yoimiya though. So very, very fun. And I love Yoimiya. She's kind of dookie doo-doo, but she's fun and she's also mega cute. And if you disagree, you're objectively wrong. Another character that can make use of this team, I'm not going to show it because I don't want to just go through every character. I just wanted to, you know, show how the team generally works. But Dea can make use of this pretty well. I still think I prefer Farina vaping over this, though my Farina is C2 to be completely fair. But it is a nice option for a DPS Dea setup. So that's pretty nice. There are other characters that can make use of this, right? Like any short rotation, they can make use of it. You can go Mona plus Kuching plus somebody else, right? If you wanted Lunar Charge, you could slap a Nepha into the team. Otherwise, if you didn't care about Lunar Charge, you could just go Electric Card Charge, right? So you go Fischl, Kuching, Mona, and somebody else like Shalonen. Or you go Sucrose, Mona, Kuching, and a Nepha. That could be a pretty nice team. Any team that has fast rotations is going to make really good use of Mona. But teams that really want long field time, not so much, since Mona's buffs are 13 seconds and you spend like 2 seconds on field. But of course, there are a lot of characters in the game that are like that, right? You know, characters that benefit from short rotations, characters that benefit from long rotations. That's a tangent. I should stop yapping. Now, no. We finished the support Mona showing. So we should talk about the final thing, which is DPS Mona. Now, for my DPS Mona, I will be using a Lost Prayer to the Sacred Winds, and I will also be using the 4-piece set that literally nobody has. What is it? I don't even remember what it's called. Nymph's Dream. We'll be using Nymph's Dream on our Mona, and that is because there isn't a better set currently, which really, really sucks. But in the future, I had a dream. It came to me in my dreams, winky face emoji, that we will be getting a Hex Array set very soon. And this set will make Mona much better as a DPS, as well as the other Hex Array characters. Now, how did I have this dream? No idea. But I had it. But for now, this is what we have. But this supposed future set might give crit rate and attack percent, okay? Trust me, bro. My source is my dreams. Now, right now, it's kind of rough because the team really, it depends on the team you use. If you're using Farina, you can go 4-piece Shimenawas. But then you have Farina, and you can't. First off, you're already overkilling a damage percent because of Mona, like massively. Secondly, now you have too much Hydro, so you can't try to do like a Vape setup. So Vape is also clunky. And yeah, mostly just those two things. So Shimenawa requires Farina in the team, but Farina's made better use of somewhere else. You can try to slap a Nepha in the team and use 4-piece Night of the Skies Unveiling, but she's also better used in other teams. So it's kind of weird. The best team to really make use of the huge multiplier, though, on the huge charge attack would obviously be a forward Vape team. But Mona has a lot of Hydro application on field, and we don't have a lot of good off-field Pyro applicators. So it becomes really clunky, like painfully clunky. I do not have Shalone and Endurance, so I cannot test them. They might be better here, but the characters I do have, Dea, not enough Pyro application off field. Pyro Traveler, not enough Pyro application off field. Toma, definitely not enough Pyro application off field. The only character that works here is Xiangling. But you know what Xiangling has? Energy issues. Big energy issues. I'm at 229 ER, 67, sorry, I'm going to kill myself. 66.8% crit rate, so we can consistently trigger Fav as well, right? 229 with Fav. And we're also going to be using Bennett. And I still struggle with energy sometimes. It's rough. On top of this, I just feel like Bennett doesn't have enough uptime. The 12-second duration on his burst isn't as long as I would like. I wish it was like 15 seconds. And then the last slot, it's kind of hard because you need another Hexarray character. So then you can go Sucrose, but then as the rotations go on and you have all that Pyro application, sometimes depending on where you split your rotation and go back to get all the buffs, it's inconsistent and really annoying. So I prefer to use Fischl here, I guess, but it's so rough, so rough. I really wish it was better, but this team right here is the best option I really have, I think, on my account to try to make a vaping work on Mona. So we're going to try it. You already saw the official build earlier. My Bennett, he's not even max level, 283 energy recharge. Skyward Blade, he does not have a 4-piece set on. That's because normally I steal it from Chevreuse. I guess we can go ahead and steal it from Chevreuse just to like show the maximum power that he can have. Though this is going to just a tad bit nuke his ER from 283 to 257. It's still fine though. And my Xiangling build is okay, and by okay I mean dookie doo-doo. It's literally just to apply Pyro more or less. She's not really going to be doing a lot of damage. And then we already showed the Mona build, I think, right? Pretty decent stats with the 15 crit rate she gets from her C4. I'm sitting at a fat 98.2 crit rate. So that's pretty nice. But you will see the struggles of this team. Unfortunately, this guy dies a little too quick, but the big fatty in Natlan also moves way too much. So it's kind of annoying. I just realized we don't have enough energy to burst. We probably would get it after doing, you know, that, but I just wanted to be safe. So this team, you open with Bennett because you would like to snapshot that buff on Xiangling. But then because Bennett's the third of rotation, his circle runs out earlier than I would like once we're on Mona. And here's the thing, okay? Before we start fighting this guy, Mona's going to have Hydro application from her normal attacks with standard ICD. Mona's going to have Hydro application if you use her skill, but that's going to screw it up. That's too much Hydro. So you can't use Mona's skill, or at least not early on, right? But if you don't use her skill often enough, you can't burst because she's got energy issues. And if you dash, okay, this has no ICD on Hydro application. You're too close to the enemy, which you have to be because Xiangling needs to be sucking their balls so that her Pyronado can hit. Well, now you just applied more Pyro. Whoops, screwed up your vape order. Too much Hydro, right? I think I said applied Pyro. I meant applied Hydro. You get my point. Her charge attacks, like every other charge attack, or basically every other charge attack, Hydro application with no ICD. Her elemental burst applies hydro, and I think it's 2 units of hydro, right? Double the standard amount of hydro. It's just so much hydro. So you can't dash because that's going to screw up. You can't skill because that's going to screw it up. And if you attack too fast, it's going to screw it up. Oh, I'm sure you get why all of that is so annoying. So we skill burst on Bennett, skill burst on Xiangling, skill on Fischl, and then we burst on Mona. And now we just start doing this stuff. You can see here, I'm going to look already too much. 92k, we didn't even crit. Why do I always miss the chance to miss the crit right there was what, 1.8%, I think? Yes, 1.8% to miss the crit, and we missed it. Are you kidding me right now? I'm actually going to cry. That was depressing. I hate life so much. Well, you see, I mean, you saw it. It's rough. We're going to run it back and pray to Orange Jesus I don't miss the crit this time, because that was just so stupid. But if we ever get a better buffer than Bennett and a better pyro applicator than Xiangling, this has so much potential. So much potential. But it's so clunky. I just want Mona to be juicy. Okay, that's all I want. But this is so rough. All right, there we go. We do that. I'm going to charge attack. Look at that, 293k. I am purposely waiting. Look at that. Oh, 2 hits, both like 300k? Eviscerated. But it's so clunky. Anyways, that's enough yapping. I just repeated the same point like 70,000 times. I think you get the gist. I really want a better team for this in the future. Who knows? Alice will probably be coming out, and she's definitely going to be a Hexarray character, considering she's part of the Hexen Circle. Maybe she is the off-field pyro application we need. Mona plus Alice, and then, I mean, Fischl works well in this team, but she's probably not best in slot. We wouldn't need Fischl for the Hexarray anymore, so we could go Mona plus Alice, and then 2 other characters. Ooh. There's potential. Mona at C6 could be a maybe meta DPS at some point, but that's gonna do it. I think I've yapped enough. This is probably gonna be like a freaking 50-minute video. I love Mona. I love the buffs. I'm very satisfied. The only issues I have with the buffs to Mona are 2 major things, or not major things, 2 annoying things. Are her skill still only gives the particles when it explodes. That's so annoying. Please fix that at some point. They probably won't. And the other thing being, I wish she had better teammates as a DPS, but neither of those are like too big that it impacts it that much. Overall, I'm very satisfied with these Mona buffs, and she's a really good character now. If you have her and you haven't built her, I would suggest building her and trying her out. She's quite snazzy. That's gonna do it though. If you have any ideas or stuff, leave them in the comments. Adios.